Do you think young voters understand the importance of local elections?
Not to the degree that they should at all, because that's why we see such a high drop-off rate after the presidential election. And that is just something that we always prioritize, because we know the minute we talk about it, it absolutely opens their mind to a world that I don't think they knew existed in politics. And in that way, it's not so much politics, it is community, it is local, it is school board, city council. And that's very different from, I think, a lot of people, especially what they're getting online, is that everyone's the same. Democrats and Republicans are the same. They get into the same rooms in DC and they hash it out there, and my vote means nothing. And so that's why we really try to emphasize the importance of local elections and what we do.
Welcome back to Around the District podcast. We are here with Francesca Martin. She's with Keep Arizona Blue Coalition. So you talked a little bit about your grandfather, and you have a really cool story about his story that shaped you a little bit. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so he was burned when he was coming home from being a fireman. And so he wasn't in any proper gear or anything like that, to see his kids, as my grandmother just had her third child. And so as a result, he was really badly burned because he had actually stopped on the side of the road on the 59th Street Bridge to help two people out of a car fire. So because he got burned so badly, and everyone knew like he was a savior for doing what he did. And again, I'm very thankful for the union for stepping up in that situation. But he was absolutely a hero. And so he passed away the July before I was born. And then I was born July 4th, 2004. And so I never got to meet him, but my mother made sure to name me after him. So he was Francesco, I'm Francesca. And then my middle name, Veronica, is after my grandmother. And so growing up, it was very much in a grief-stricken household, but they definitely wanted to keep his memory alive. And I think that means for me to continue activism and looking out for other people, that very strongly stays with me every day.
Yeah, because he was a hero. He did, he was a hero.
Yeah.
And I think those are the type of things when we like to honor the men and women who are serving our communities. Those are the stories that remind us how important that is to do that. Because, he could have lost his life that day and he didn't. Yeah. But it was altered, So, but thank you for sharing that, because I thought we were talking off camera and I was like, that's a cool story and people should hear about that.
I will say my favorite quote I've ever heard was, the first time somebody dies is the physical death, but the last time they die is the last time you say their name. So I think that's always really important. That's why I like to talk about it. You like it?
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Keep him at the forefront. Yeah. His memory and legacy lives on. So you co-founded Keep Arizona Blue Student Coalition. So what skills today do you think organizers need in order to be successful?
I think at the forefront of every organizer's mind should just be the passion for what they're doing, and talking to other people. I think when you see, and especially when I see a lot of the more staff that we bring on our team or interns that we bring on our team, and they're able to have really in-depth conversations about why someone feels a certain way about voting, that's a real skill that you have to have, because it's really hard to talk to people when you think that they might be adversarial or you don't know what their reaction is going to be to the opinions you have. But to try to relate to someone and do it for the passion of politics, not just and the passion of community, not just, I want you to think a certain way, and just making sure to hit different outreach methods when you do it.
I think it's key what you said about community being at the forefront, and community more so than politics.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like when people talk about politics, they're talking about an issue that they want to get across and not necessarily what the needs are of the voters or the community or what have you. But when you look at it from a community perspective, you see it differently. And I think that's what impacts younger voters the most. Yeah. And so at ASU, so first of all, I saw you a lot during the Harris campaign, because you and I were like, we were around each other a lot just because of what we were involved in.
Yeah.
But it was great to see the younger voters. So what in your opinion today would really, really keep them engaged? So you open the door talking about what matters, but what keeps them there? What gets them involved?
The best way that I think we can keep young people staying engaged even after the election cycle is by continuing to talk to them, whether it is on campus. So that's why we had such a large outreach on campus in 2025 in the quote unquote off year, but we still know that there were local elections all around the state. And then also really empowering the students that you can get to volunteer or work with you. I saw a huge difference, when bringing on a student and saying, hey, and especially during the Harris Walls campaign, it was ramping up very quickly towards the end. And so they were asking, and especially I was very thankful that Keep Arizona Blue was seen as kind of this student youth hub for if they needed a young person to speak, we could provide that, someone of a specific background or that has a specific culture that they wanted to highlight. That I'm able to actually connect them with a young person who may have never been in that type of room or may never have thought that they were going to speak at a press conference. Yeah. They might have only been involved for 6 months, but it is about not just saying, oh, well, I want, myself to be out there, but like, I want to make sure that I give someone the opportunity to do just as much as I've been able to do. So that's really, I think, what our organization definitely focuses on.
What about in the summer months? Because it was hot.
In the summer, we actually had a really fun program in the summer. I will say we had a lot of interns in the summer and staff in the summer working every day on the ground, especially in our swing district. So we actually held a student roundtable in every swing district in the state. And it was indoors. It wasn't outside because it was really hot. Yeah. But it was a student roundtable, and we got to hear different things from other young people, because we always say, if you're in a rural area, find one young person and you will find a bunch more young people. We actually have an intern this January at Yavapai College. We're really excited about that. And so if you're in a rural area, you can get that one person to find a bunch of other young people. So we would have a, roundtable in Casa Grande, but in LD 16, and then another one in Marana in LD 17. And the issues that these young people are talking about are vastly different from one another. So one can be more so focused on housing. Another one could be more focused on secondary education, but there was always a difference in what their needs were. And so when you say community, like that is community, and having those legislators listen to them and also say like, look, I'm a legislator and yes, I'm running for office, but I'm going to take the time to speak to someone, whether they're 16, whether they're 20, to know.
Do you feel like you get pushback being so young, or do you feel like you are embraced because you are getting to a community that is kind of left behind because they're so young?
I think it's a difficult balance. When you're so young getting involved, of course, you're going to have people that I think maybe just don't take you as seriously. They might admire your passion, but being young and having a lot of ideas that later on I was able to bring to fruition, I was more focused on what, not whether someone was like, oh my God, you're doing such a great job, but oh my God, like I actually want to work with you and give you something concrete to help support you. Like that makes a huge difference rather than just like a pat on the head, like, oh, you're doing so great.
Good job.
We want you to, because we want to show like, look, we care about young people, but actually, and that's why we heavily prioritize fundraising, because we want to invest in young people. That's where you actually get people turning out, coming on board. That's why we have a paid internship program. And they're able to table. And that wouldn't happen. Like Turning Point USA has the money to invest, and we're just not seeing it on the other side. And so like, that's why, not to like turn what your question was into money, but like that is like a big piece.
That's why I think it's so, what you say that's so important, because if you invest in the younger generation to teach them how to get into politics and why to get into politics, then you have this pipeline of people that's going to come in to make change for their generation, as opposed to having, 80-year-olds in Congress, like we say.
Well, yeah. And also peer-to-peer relations. But we sent out like hundreds of thousands of texts to young voters, tens of thousands of calls where we were phone banking, and they heard from another young person about, hey, like, are you registered to vote? Like, are you getting ready to vote? Like, you're registered. Do you have a plan to vote? Those things, because we wanted to make it as easy as possible. Like, we were also the only Democratic organization to invest and work really hard for a voter guide where you put in your address and it comes up with all of your specific candidate. An 18-year-old does not know what LD they're in.
Right.
I didn't know. I was there for
my parents don't know what LD they're in. So you can't expect an 18-year-old. So, having that voter guide, like that made it so much easier for a young person. It takes the stress off of, oh, I'm just going to throw my ballot away. I don't need to vote. It's like, no, like look and vote down the ballot too. And so, doing that program, like that all is something that we invested in, but we saw a great turnout rate of like 73%. That's huge for young
people. And I
people.
think you have a set of eyes that we don't necessarily see, because we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with, yes, we had internet, but we didn't have the exposure that you did your entire life. So you have a set of ideas and eyes that we don't necessarily have or see, or how to reach that group, a group of 18 to 20 somethings that we're never going to reach that group because we don't know how to relate to that or how to talk to that. So you, even through social media or even through text campaigns, would know how to make this easier for me, for you, for how do you reach that student? Oh, this is super easy. Here's a voter guide. Whoop. Okay.
But do young voters want to be talked to?
Yes, like that I think is a huge thing that, and what you say about young people know how to reach young people best. I think a lot of people will say, like you would say, oh, I get way too many calls. I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. A young person never gets called about, whether it's donating, but also voting. They never get called about voting because, again, they're seen as low propensity voters. But then we see that really as high opportunity. So that means that we can contact them and they'll say, are you real? And then we respond, yes. And then they'll say something funny and then we'll say something funny back because we want them to know we are here to help you.
But are they low propensity voters because nobody ever contacts them?
That is it. It's a cycle of nobody's reaching out to them. Right. They're not voting.
Right.
So we really yes, we're investing in this. And I guess some people have always thought, oh, that's a risky investment. We shouldn't do that. Well, it proved to be effective for us.
Right.
And we know, especially in a state like Arizona where we're winning or losing by a couple hundred votes, that makes a huge, huge difference. So we're happy to do that.
So when you are meeting these students, do you see, or are there some that may stand out to you that person can be a good candidate one day? What do you do in those situations?
In those situations, I ask them if they want an internship. and then I really do. I have met with a lot of, especially a lot of the people that work with us now. We actually brought three of our current staff members were former interns. So Cameron Bautista, well, I'm going to give these people a shout out. Cameron Bautista, he's a Flint scholar. He's one of the smartest policy-driven people I know. He's incredibly smart. And we brought him on as our political director because he originally was thinking of running for office. And then we looked at him and we said, why don't you run a few campaigns? And now I hope he's the smartest campaign person I know. And I know he'll make the smartest, whether it's school board, city council, state legislator, whatever he wants to run for, he will be the best at it. Because we gave him the opportunity. We said, we'll kind of set up the framework. We'll help you connect with these people. Just do it now.
So you throw them in the trenches and you're know what it's like and then figure out where you want to go.
Yeah. But we are there every step of the way for advice or mentorship. And we also have Jasmine Garcia, who came on our staff recently, and Daphne Zamora, who also those are two young, incredibly strong Latino leaders that I absolutely think should run for office in the future. Right. And I told them as much as you want to put into this job and talking to us or whatever is as much as you'll get out of it. So I want you to come to every event with me. I want you to go as much as you possibly can, just so that I can introduce you to the people that, again, if I want them to run for office,
people
I will
you should
give them everything that they can. Yeah, because I think a lot of the times too, not only is voting not advertised to young people, but whether or not you can be a precinct committee person is very much not advertised to young people at all.
Yeah, that is so key because, so are you introducing them to their districts so that they can get involved, because that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like your coalition is succession planning for the Democratic Party.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm thinking about that every day. And a lot of people, and older, political people will say,
time, Francesca.
I know. It's time. A lot of older political people will say, oh, we're looking for young people. I'm I have about 10 of them on speed dial right now. And I have 20 from last year that
do you find that they say that, but they don't really mean it? Does that happen quite a bit? Because the minute I've seen where the young Dems start getting involved, they're like, oh, wait, you don't know. You need to think about that more. That's not how we do things, or something along those lines.
Right. Well, I mean, you think about it, if you really think about it, especially on a campaign level, and I can't speak to, whether you're working on Capitol Hill or something like that, but on a campaign level, especially with groups like school board, they don't have a campaign manager. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, you learn essential skills like that and you can run an entire program. You can run an entire candidate. And how great is it to be able to do that and have that sort of autonomy over a campaign and say, I did this. I fundraised for them. I knew what they needed and I helped them. And I think a lot of older people in the political field might say, oh, of course we want young people involved. They want to have young people involved to the extent that they do. But it's about investing in those young people. Again, even giving them a free ticket to a fundraiser to meet the people they need to meet. That goes a very long way. I know, because I've asked for many student tickets in my time. Of the last month, I am no longer allowed to do that. But, you know, it's a $500 event, and how are we supposed to get young people in the rooms that they need to go in?
They can't afford that.
I can't afford $500. So, you know, I would have never met certain people if they were like, hey, maybe come into this room. And so now we make sure to do that with other young people and say, hey, like, you need to be here.
That's great. Yeah. I know it's tough because I'm, you know, I'm involved with LD12, and I know we're always looking for young div, always. And our district is an older district.
Yeah.
Like, but eventually, this is going to sound morbid, but people will die off. You need to replace them.
Well, and you want like a younger spirit. Like, I know we have, you know, Armando running an LD12. That's really exciting. That's a young candidate that's running. And he's going to be a younger
Francesca
voice.
Cleared it up for me. Good, thank you.
You know, so that's exactly like it's going to be a younger voice. And so as older people are getting older and opinions change, we bring in new voices, and that's something very exciting.
What's so important though is that it is a pipeline, right? And what I found, especially the more I got involved in LD12, the more I realized that even people in their 30s and 40s aren't involved. And part of that, I think, is because, you know, when you're in your 30s or 40s, you're getting married, you're having kids, your life is busy. So the majority of people are older. Mm-hmm. And some very old. And it's like, you're right. Not to be morbid, but you're right. They're going to die off. So you have to get people involved at 16, 17, 18. Why? Because they'll stay involved in their 30s and 40s. And not check out. They'll continue to vote. They'll continue to stay checked in and keep up with candidates and keep up with things that are important to them and their families, rather than just saying, I don't care about this, I'm not going to vote. And
plus the world's changing.
And the world is drastically
the
changing.
World has changed.
You know, so it is so important that you and other young adults get involved, to get people involved now, to stay involved for the future. And I think
you are.
And Arizona especially, I think, because it's a retirement state, has been, it's a retirement state. Yeah. People move here and are older voters. So, you know, you want the younger generation to be making decisions for the younger generation. I think our education system, I know our education system suffers so much because of the older voters. So, you know, it's important. It's very important to get this.
So I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. Are you looking to run for office one day? And if you don't want to answer.
No. I think that the people that run for office, I think it's something you can't predict. Maybe that's already telling, so politician of me to already say, but it's not something you can predict. I hope that I bring service to my community, but I also don't think that the only way to do it is running for office. There, you know, and I don't want to like either slight organizational leaders for the work they do. It's like, I mean, there are activists that probably do more than some politicians. And like in that way, I'm like, it's meaningful. Like running for office is meaningful and a huge sacrifice. But there are also so many other things and ways that I think like, oh, I could get involved that way and make a difference.
I think the backbone is grassroots, are the people behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So like, it's great to be the person, the face of something, but you know, all the work is done behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that people don't realize that. Mm-hmm. So organizations like yours really do matter.
Yeah.
And I like your whole pipeline comment because I'm like, that's the word I was actually looking for when I'm like, we need people to be in place when we need them, not to prepare them last minute. That doesn't work.
Yeah. But it's also a pipeline of organizations like yours to help build and grow and get people involved as well. I mean, if you look at Turning Point, it's a machine. Mm-hmm. And we have to build young adults to fight against that awful machine. You know,
do you think young voters, and you touched upon this, but I want to like dive in a little deeper. Do you think young voters understand the importance of local elections?
Not to the degree that they should at all, because that's why we see such a high drop-off rate after the presidential election. And that is just something that we always prioritize, because we know the minute we talk about it, it absolutely opens their mind to a world that I don't think they knew existed in politics. And in that way, it's not so much politics, it is community, it is local, it is school board, city council. And that's very different from, I think, a lot of people, especially what they're getting online, is that everyone's the same. Democrats and Republicans are the same. They get into the same rooms in DC and they hash it out there, and my vote means nothing. And it's like, we know that that's not always true. And so that's why we really try to emphasize the importance of local elections and what we do.
So that's something that you guys are focusing on more, to realize like, hey, this is these elections have a daily or a direct impact on your life. And
well, we don't just say, oh, flip the state legislature for Democrats. We tell them, like, flip the state legislature so you can afford a home one day. Yeah. I mean, to your point of it's an older community, but we're also home to the largest the largest public university, Arizona State University. Which has so many young people there. And then they want to be able to live in Tempe or live in one of the surrounding suburbs for the rest of their life. They should be able to, but it's so difficult.
It's expensive.
It's expensive.
And we talked about that on an earlier podcast, because I live in Tempe and I'm like, so if I were to sell my house today, I couldn't afford to live in Tempe because the price has gone up so much. So affordability is definitely an issue. And with ASU being right there, I would want to be close to the campus if I'm living off campus, right? Yeah. It just makes sense. So,
but not even just buying, renting.
Yeah.
And how do you rent?
Oh my gosh, that's a
whole other topic.
So you were recognized in 2024, or you were inducted into the Arizona Democratic Hall of Fame. So, like, what did that mean to you? How'd that make you feel?
The only thing that meant to me was that I was on the right track. Like, it's not something that I think, someone should attain for. I didn't do something.
You're doing it.
And I will say this is also a big piece of advice I give to young people who are wanting to get involved. Don't ever do something because you think it looks good. Like, don't suddenly go to LD meetings because you think you'll get a Hall of Fame award. Like, I never went into anything thinking that. I was like, I'm going to drive to Yuma because I know that people in Yuma care that someone drove 3 hours. Like people remember that. Or I drove to Flagstaff because I know that this, group of like liberal men and women will remember that. Like, and then they did. And that's that's an outcome of the work that I did. So I'm very thankful for it. And I'm extremely grateful for it. But I also think it's just a result of doing something because I love to do it. And I tell everyone, like, if your passion is campaigns, do campaigns. Don't get a job in DC because you think that'll look better on my resume. Do it because you love to be in DC. And if you don't, and you want to change course.
Are campaigns your passion? Because you've worked on quite a few.
Yeah, they really are. And I think it's just so interesting because I think that's really where the conversations have with voters. I think you can't even talk about having good legislation unless we have a majority in the legislature. We can't even talk about having enough good bills until we actually have, a legislature and governor that will pass it. So, yes, policy is incredibly important, but I feel like we can't even get to the policy portion until we talk about, getting those people in office in the first place. And that is really fun.
So that's why you like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you how you stay grounded, but I'm hearing that I think already. Okay. You have a really good focus on your purpose, and you're focused on that. And that's, that guides, it seems like it guides everything you do. Yeah. So I don't need to ask that question because you've already answered it. Okay. So looking ahead and your call to action. So what excites you most about the future of youth organization in Arizona?
The thing that excites me the most about youth organizing in Arizona is that, like, we really strive to make sure that all young people across the state are connected. We set up a bi-weekly call with every youth organization in the state to do joint phone banks and efforts like that and stuff like that. And we had a holiday party a month ago. And I think also the amount of money we raised, because as an organization too, like last cycle, we raised $280,000. And like for a group of students who started it and were working in college the whole time, like that's a huge deal.
That's
for us.
Huge.
So it might not be as big of a deal as $1 million turning point, but especially for what we're focused on. Yeah.
It's a huge start.
Yeah. So, we raised a lot of money, and I think that will show people that, look, like, we did this, we, got this many young people out as a result, and that will have an effect. And so at least now that we've shown and proven that what we're doing is on the correct path and the right way to do something, that in the future, people will continue to invest in youth organizing and other young organizers that want to get involved.
That's great. Yeah. Like, you guys are off to a really good start.
Thank you.
For young people who care about change but don't know where to start, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to visit keepazblue.org and volunteer with us and apply for an internship. And then also immediately go to look for your legislative district map and start going to your legislative district meetings, especially if you have an active legislative district. And if you don't, maybe find one near you that does. Because I think it's incredibly important, especially even to bring a friend, because it is an older crowd and it might be intimidating. And if I didn't go in with friends the first time I walked into an LD meeting, I would have been very intimidated. And yes, they embrace you, but it's kind of nerve-wracking. Yeah. So you want to have people around you who are like-minded and, go out and volunteer as much as possible in what you like to do. And you won't have to do anything outside of that. As long as you just continue sticking to what you love to do, everything will
fall into place.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Thank
So I think one last question.
Yeah.
When you think about the impact you want to have, what kind of political culture are you working to build?
The political culture I'm working to build definitely would be one of a very strong community and where people feel like they have a strong network to turn to, especially when things get tough in their life, because we know in politics, like it just becomes very close very quickly because you're always together and you're always you're talking about very deeply serious issues, especially what we see with ICE going on right now. That's affecting people's families. Mm-hmm. They're having families torn apart. So at that point, it's like the activists who are working for that's not just like a political issue that we need to elect Democrats for now. That is something where, you have to call your local legislator and do that. So it's creating an apparatus where, especially young people too, know who to call and the people in their community and the community organizations that they can go to for volunteering with them or for help with them, or if they need resources from them. Like those resources should be readily accessible for everyone rather than just people in the know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how can our listeners reach out to you, Keep Arizona Blue?
Our listeners can reach out to Keep Arizona Blue by visiting keepazblue.org, where we have a lot of helpful links, and you can contact me or email me at francesca@keepazblue.org if you know how to spell my name. So as long as that's there, you have my email now. It's public.
Well, we will definitely post that in the show notes.
Thank you. Your grandfather would be so proud.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That means a lot.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We will definitely post Keep Arizona Blue in the show notes so that people know how to contact you. Whether it's turning out Arizona voters, mentoring the next organizer, or simply staying engaged in local elections, this work really matters because policies do not exist in a vacuum. They truly shape lives. So thank you all for joining us today. This has been the Around the Districts podcast. Please share, like, and comment, and we will see you all on the next episode.